Jake Harrison stood at the center of the massive council chamber on Nexus Prime Station. The room stretched out in all directions, filled with hundreds of alien delegates from across the galaxy. Their strange voices created a low hum that echoed off the crystal walls. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had multiple eyes or skin that changed colors. But they all shared one thing in common. They were about to hear something that would change everything. Jake looked down at the small device in his hand. The message from Earth was simple and clear. 3 years of trying. 3 years of begging these aliens to help stop the slaughter. 3 years of watching human colonies burn while the Galactic Council did nothing but talk. The Zephyrian Empire had been killing humans for years now. They would arrive at peaceful human settlements with their massive warships. They would demand the humans leave. When the humans refused, the Zephyrians would open fire. Men, women, children. It did not matter to them. Over 2 million humans had died this way. Every time it happened, Jake and his team would come here. They would show pictures of the dead. They would present evidence. They would beg for help. The council would listen politely. They would express their concern. They would pass resolutions condemning the violence. But they never did anything real to stop it. The other alien species seemed to think this was normal. They talked about balance and patience. They said violence only led to more violence. They believed in endless discussion and compromise. Meanwhile, human children kept dying. Jake stepped forward to the speaking platform. The chamber fell quiet. Every eye, tentacle, and sensor focused on him. He had given many speeches here before. This one would be different. Members of the Galactic Council, Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. I come before you, today not to ask for help, not to present more evidence, not to beg for justice. I come to deliver a message from the United Earth Federation. The alien delegates leaned forward. This was not how Jake usually started his speeches. 3 years ago, the Zephyrian Empire began systematically destroying human colonies. Over 2 million of our people have died. We have brought this matter before you countless times. We have followed your procedures. We have respected your processes. We have waited for your justice. Jake paused and looked around the room. He could see confusion on many alien faces. The Aquilian delegates whispered among themselves with their melodic voices. The hegemony representatives sat stone still, their warrior culture making them better at reading the tension in the air. We trusted in diplomacy, Jake continued. We believed in the power of words and reason. We thought that intelligent beings from across the galaxy could work together to stop senseless killing. We were wrong. A wave of shocked gasps and clicks filled the chamber. This was not what they expected to hear from a human diplomat. The Zephyrian Empire continues to murder our people while you debate committee formations and subcommittee appointments. They laugh at your resolutions. They ignore your sanctions. They see your endless talk as weakness. Council Speaker Veltar of the Aquilian Republic stood up, his blue skin shimmering with agitation. Ambassador Harrison, surely you cannot mean to abandon the diplomatic process. Violence is never the answer. Jake looked at the tall, graceful alien who had spoken those words so many times before. Speaker Veltar, with respect, that is exactly what I mean. The United Earth Federation formally withdraws from all diplomatic negotiations regarding the Zephyrian conflict. We are done talking. The chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens shouted and whistled and clicked in dozens of different languages. Some stood up so quickly they knocked over their chairs. Others frantically activated communication devices to contact their home worlds. Jake raised his hand for silence, but the noise continued. He waited patiently, just as he had waited for 3 years for these aliens to do something meaningful. Finally, the chamber began to quiet down. We tried your way, Jake said, his voice now harder than before. We followed your rules. We respected your traditions. We believed in your system. But your system has failed. While you debate, our people die. While you form committees, our colonies burn. While you write strongly worded letters, our children scream. The human delegation behind Jake began to move. They gathered up their ceremonial items from their assigned seats, the peace tokens that every species brought to council meetings, the traditional offerings of goodwill, the symbolic gifts of cooperation. One by one, they placed these items on the marble floor and walked away from them. "The galaxy is about to learn something about humanity," Jake said as his team filed toward the exit. "We are not weak because we choose diplomacy first. We are not helpless because we prefer words to weapons. We simply believe in giving peace a chance before we show you what we are really capable of." The alien delegates watched in stunned silence as the humans moved toward the chamber doors. This had never happened before in the Council's long history. No species had ever simply walked away from diplomacy. Jake stopped at the threshold and turned back one final time. "To the Zephyrian delegation, if you are listening, you should know this. You have been fighting human civilians for 3 years. Farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, children. Soon you will face human soldiers, real ones, and you will learn why we tried so hard to avoid this moment." The massive doors closed behind the human delegation with a sound that echoed through the silent chamber. On the floor, the abandoned peace tokens seemed to glow under the chamber lights, like small graves for the diplomatic process that had just died. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter received the coded message she had been waiting for. 3 simple words: "Diplomacy is over." She turned to her staff and gave the order that would change the galaxy forever. "Activate Ghost Fleet. All units, all sectors. It's time to show them who we really are." The asteroid field near Kepler Station had been empty space for as long as anyone could remember. Merchant ships passed through it daily, carrying goods between the human colonies and alien trade partners. Mining vessels worked the smaller rocks, looking for rare metals and ice. Nobody paid much attention to the larger asteroids that drifted silently through the darkness. Nobody except Captain Pete Rodriguez. Pete sat in his command chair, watching the countdown on his main screen. 3 minutes until activation. His crew moved around him with quiet efficiency, checking systems and preparing for what was about to happen. They had been waiting for this moment for 5 years, living inside a hollowed-out asteroid, pretending to be a mining operation while the galaxy ignored them. "All stations report ready, sir," his tactical officer announced. Pete nodded and activated his communicator. "This is Rodriguez to all Ghost Fleet units. You know what this means. Today we stop pretending to be something we're not." Across human space, similar scenes were playing out. Hidden military installations that had posed as research stations for decades began powering up their real equipment. Ships that looked like cargo haulers started shedding their fake outer hulls. Weapons that had been disguised as mining lasers revealed their true purpose. The UES Retribution broke free from its asteroid camouflage, like a metal predator emerging from its den. The massive dreadnought stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapons that no alien species had ever seen before. Its armor was black as space itself, designed to absorb sensor sweeps and remain invisible until the moment of attack. Pete felt the familiar hum of the ship's engines as they came online at full power. This was what the Retribution was built for. Not exploration or trade or diplomacy. War. His communications officer looked up from her station. "Sir, we're receiving activation signals from Ghost Fleet units across 12 star systems. The entire network is coming online." "Good," Pete replied. "Send a message to all units. Begin Phase 1 operations immediately." Near the debris field where New Phoenix Colony used to exist, Captain Amy Foster received the same orders. Her squadron had been patrolling this area for months, officially searching for survivors from the Zephyrian attack. In reality, they had been waiting for revenge. Amy looked at the sensor readings on her screen. A Zephyrian patrol fleet was approaching, probably coming to admire their handiwork. 12 ships, including 2 heavy cruisers. Under normal circumstances, her 5 ships would have been no match for them. But these were not normal circumstances anymore. "All ships, this is Foster," she said into her communicator. "You see those Zephyrian vessels approaching. They think we're going to run away and call for help, just like we always do. They're wrong." Her ships moved into attack formation with practiced precision. the Zephyrians would expect the humans to retreat toward the nearest jump point, sending distress calls and hoping for rescue. Instead, Amy ordered her ships to accelerate directly toward the enemy fleet. The Zephyrian commander must have been confused. His ships slowed down, probably trying to figure out why the humans were approaching instead of running. That confusion lasted exactly 37 seconds, which was how long it took for Amy's ships to get within weapons range. The first salvo of human missiles caught the Zephyrians completely off guard. These were not the weak defensive weapons they had grown used to fighting. These were military-grade hunter-killers designed to penetrate alien armor and destroy enemy ships with maximum efficiency. 2 Zephyrian destroyers exploded in the first exchange. The remaining ships tried to return fire, but Amy's vessels were already moving, using maneuvers that no merchant ship should have been able to perform, because they were not merchant ships anymore. Back on Nexus Prime Station, the Galactic Council was trying to understand what was happening. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy, all saying the same impossible thing. Human ships were attacking with coordinated precision, using weapons and tactics that nobody had ever seen before. Council Speaker Veltar stood before the emergency assembly, his usual calm demeanor replaced by obvious concern. We are receiving reports from 12 different star systems. Human vessels are engaging in military operations with a level of organization that suggests extensive planning. Ambassador Crixtal of the Hegemony, a species known for their military expertise, studied the tactical reports with growing alarm. These are not random attacks. This is a coordinated military campaign. The humans have been planning this for years. The Aquilian intelligence chief, a normally confident being named Thelvan, looked shaken as he presented his analysis. Our intelligence networks detected no unusual military buildup in human space. These ships and weapons appeared from nowhere. It's as if they materialized out of empty space. Because that's exactly what they did, said a new voice. The council turned to see a human figure entering the chamber. It was not Jake Harrison or any of the familiar human diplomats. This was someone new, wearing a simple uniform with no obvious rank markings. Who are you? Veltar demanded. The human smiled, but there was no warmth in it. My name is Colonel Frank Wright. I've been living on this station for 2 years, officially as a cultural attaché. Actually, I've been watching you and reporting everything back to Earth. The alien delegate stared at him in shock, a human spy operating under their noses for years. You see, Frank continued, you made a mistake. You assumed that because humans seemed bad at warfare, we actually were bad at warfare. You thought our merchant ships were really merchant ships. You believed our mining operations were really mining operations. You took everything at face value because that's what you wanted to see. Crixtal, his warrior instincts finally activated, stood up aggressively. What are you saying? I'm saying you never fought humans before, Frank replied, calmly. You fought human civilians, farmers, traders, colonists who just wanted to live in peace. You never faced human soldiers because we kept our soldiers hidden. We hoped we would never need them. He gestured toward the reports scattered across the council chamber. Every one of those mining ships contains a full weapons loadout. Every research station is actually a military base. Every trade route is a supply line for our hidden fleet. We've been building a shadow military for decades while you watched us build cities and farms. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans had not been weak. They had been hiding their strength. All those years of peaceful expansion, cultural exchange, and diplomatic cooperation had been cover for the largest military deception in galactic history. Frank turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Council Speaker Veltar? You might want to start evacuation procedures. This station is in human territory now, and my people don't much like surprise visits anymore. The massive station shuddered as human warships dropped out of hyperspace around Nexus Prime, their weapons trained on the diplomatic installation that had failed so completely to protect human lives. Admiral Ben Tucker watched the Zephyrian 8th Fleet approach through the Meridian Junction with cold satisfaction. The alien formation looked impressive, he had to admit. 47 ships arranged in their traditional diamond pattern, with their flagship leading the charge. The Zephyrians had painted victory symbols on their hulls, probably celebrating their recent massacre of human colonists. They were about to learn what real victory looked like. Ben stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Predator, surrounded by officers who had spent years pretending to be civilian engineers and merchant captains. Now they wore their true uniforms, black and silver with no bright colors or ceremonial decorations. Human military doctrine had always been about function over form. "Enemy fleet is maintaining course and speed," reported his tactical officer, Commander Julie Barnes. "They're following standard Zephyrian battle formation, no changes to their approach." "Of course they're not changing," Ben said quietly. "They think they're facing another group of helpless civilians. They have no idea what's waiting for them." The Zephyrians had always fought the same way. They would approach in their impressive formations, demand surrender, then destroy anything that refused to submit. It worked well against civilian targets. It worked poorly against people who had studied their tactics for decades and designed countermeasures for every possible scenario. Ben activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Tucker. You know what these creatures did to New Phoenix Colony. 2,000 families burned alive while they watched from orbit. Today we return the favor." The human fleet moved into attack position with mechanical precision. Unlike the aliens, they did not arrange themselves in pretty formations or traditional patterns. They spread out in what looked like chaos, but was actually a carefully planned trap designed to exploit every weakness in Zephyrian tactical doctrine. The enemy commander, probably expecting the usual human retreat, began broadcasting surrender, demands in multiple languages. Ben listened to the translator convert the alien words into English. Standard threats about resistance being futile, and mercy being available only to those who submitted immediately. "Communications, open a channel to the Zephyrian flagship," Ben ordered. The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of the enemy ship. The Zephyrian commander was a large creature with dark scales and multiple arms, wearing ornate armor covered in battle trophies. Some of those trophies looked suspiciously like human artifacts. "I am War Leader Vex Thor of the Zephyrian 8th Fleet," the alien announced. "You will surrender your vessels and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." Ben stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "War Leader Vex Thor, I am Admiral Ben Tucker of the United Earth Federation Navy. I have a counter-proposal. You will eject your escape pods and abandon your ships immediately. Any vessel that does not comply will be destroyed with all hands." The Zephyrian commander made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "You are greatly outnumbered, human. Your civilian ships cannot match our warships." "You're right about one thing," Ben replied. "This is not going to be a fair fight." He cut the communication and turned to his weapons officer. "All ships are authorized to engage. Show them what happens when you murder human children." What followed was not a battle. It was an extermination. The human ships moved like wolves attacking prey, using coordinated strikes that the Zephyrians had never encountered before. While the aliens tried to maintain their traditional formations, the humans attacked from multiple directions simultaneously, focusing overwhelming firepower on single targets. The first Zephyrian ship died within minutes, its shields overloaded by weapons that were far more powerful than anything the aliens had expected from human vessels. The second and third ships followed quickly, their hulls torn apart by projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed. Ben watched the tactical display as his fleet methodically destroyed the enemy formation. The Zephyrians tried to retreat, but the humans had positioned ships at every escape route. They tried to call for help, but the humans were jamming all communications. Most disturbing of all, when Zephyrian ships began launching escape pods, the human ships did not ignore them as galactic warfare customs dictated. They hunted them down and destroyed them one by one. "Sir," his communications officer said nervously, "we're receiving distress calls from the escape pods. They're requesting mercy according to galactic warfare conventions." Ben's expression never changed. "We are no longer bound by galactic conventions. They showed no mercy to our civilians. They get no mercy from our military. Back on Nexus Prime, the emergency council session had been running for 18 hours straight. The reports, coming in, were unlike anything the galactic community had ever seen. Humans were not just winning battles. They were systematically destroying every Zephyrian force they encountered. Ambassador Crixtal of the Hegemony stood before the assembled delegates, holding a data tablet with shaking hands. I have received footage from a Zephyrian survivor. The content is disturbing, but the council must see what we are dealing with. The chamber's main screen activated, showing grainy video from inside a Zephyrian military station. The recording began normally, with Zephyrian soldiers at their posts, but quickly descended into chaos as explosions rocked the facility. Through the smoke and debris, figures in black armor moved with lethal efficiency. Human soldiers, but unlike any the galaxy had seen before. They did not accept surrenders or take prisoners. They did not hesitate or show mercy. They moved through the station like death itself, eliminating every Zephyrian they encountered with clinical precision. The video showed Colonel Kate Stevens leading her Marines through the corridors, her face hidden behind a tactical helmet, but her movements revealing years of training and experience. When a group of Zephyrian civilians tried to surrender, waving white flags and speaking words of submission, Kate's team simply gunned them down and continued their advance. "This is not warfare as we understand it," Crixtal said after the video ended. "This is extermination. The humans are not following any galactic combat protocol. They are treating this as a war of annihilation." Council Speaker Veltar, his usual composure completely shattered, struggled to process what he had seen. But humans are supposed to be peaceful. They believe in diplomacy and cooperation. They have always advocated for nonviolent solutions. "They did believe in those things," said a new voice from the chamber entrance. The council turned to see another human figure entering the chamber. This one wore a general's uniform and moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. "General Tony Clark, Earth Defense Force," the human introduced himself. "I'm here to explain something that you clearly don't understand. Humans prefer peace, but we are very good at war. We tried to avoid this situation for as long as possible because we knew what would happen once we stopped holding back." He gestured toward the now blank screen where the video had played. "What you just saw is not brutality, it's efficiency. We studied your warfare methods for decades. We learned how you fight, how you think, how you make decisions. Then we designed a military doctrine specifically to counter every alien species in the galaxy." General Clark walked closer to the alien delegates, most of whom instinctively backed away from him. "The Zephyrians made a mistake. They assumed that because we chose diplomacy first, we were weak at everything else. They were wrong. We are excellent at diplomacy. We are also excellent at war. We simply prefer to use our words before we use our weapons." He paused and looked around the chamber at the frightened alien faces. "But once we decide that words have failed, we become very thorough about using our weapons instead." Commander Helen Price stood in the shadows of a Zephyrian government building, watching alien officials scramble to evacuate their most important files. They moved with the panic of people who had finally realized their world was ending. What they did not realize was that it had ended months ago. They just had not been told yet. Helen had been living on this world for 3 years, officially as a trade representative for human agricultural products. Her cover identity was perfect. She had an apartment in the diplomatic quarter, friends among the alien civilian population, and even a Zephyrian language tutor who thought she was making excellent progress with their complex grammar. None of them knew that she had been photographing their military installations, mapping their communication networks, and identifying every government official who had supported the attacks on human colonies. Her real job was not selling grain shipments, it was preparing for war. Her communicator buzzed softly with an encrypted message from Earth. Phase 2 was beginning. All human operatives were authorized to begin active operations. The time for watching and waiting was over. Helen smiled as she activated her hidden equipment. 3 years of patient intelligence gathering was about to pay off. The Zephyrians thought they were retreating to the safety of their core worlds. They had no idea that humans had been there all along, living among them, learning their secrets, and preparing for this exact moment. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as human operatives revealed themselves. People who had spent years establishing cover identities as merchants, diplomats, students, and researchers suddenly became military assets. The Zephyrian Empire discovered that their most secure facilities had been compromised by enemies they had never suspected. On the Zephyrian capital world, Director Susan Wright coordinated the largest intelligence operation in human history from a basement room beneath what appeared to be a small shipping company. For 5 years, she had been the friendly human businesswoman who exported Zephyrian artwork to Earth. Her real job was running a spy network that covered 300 star systems. Susan looked at the tactical displays that showed the positions of every major Zephyrian military unit. Thanks to her agents, the humans knew exactly where their enemies were, what weapons they had, and how they planned to defend themselves. It was like playing a game where you could see all of your opponents' cards. Status report, she said into her secure communicator. Responses came in from operatives across Zephyrian space. Agent Johnson had successfully sabotaged the main communications relay on Keth Prime. Agent Martinez had planted explosives in the ammunition depot on Sorrow Station. Agent Kim had uploaded a virus to the fleet coordination computers at Central Command. The Zephyrians were not just being defeated in battle. Their entire infrastructure was collapsing from within, destroyed by humans who had spent years gaining their trust and learning their weaknesses. Captain Chris Morgan's reconnaissance ship drifted silently through deep space, its sensors recording the movement of fleeing Zephyrian vessels. For 2 years, his ship had been charting every hyperlane and defensive position in this sector, under the cover of a scientific research mission. The alien authorities had even given him awards for his contributions to stellar cartography. Now, he was using that same detailed knowledge to hunt down enemy ships that thought they were escaping to safety. Every route they might take, every hiding place they might use, every supply depot they might need had already been mapped and prepared for by human forces. Chris watched his tactical display as 3 Zephyrian cruisers dropped out of hyperspace, near what they thought was an empty system. They had probably chosen this location because their charts showed no human presence here. Unfortunately for them, their charts were 3 years out of date. Human battle stations had been disguised as asteroids throughout this system, their weapons powered down and their crews waiting patiently for exactly this scenario. As soon as the Zephyrian ships appeared, the trap was sprung. The aliens found themselves surrounded by enemies they had not known existed, in a star system they had thought was empty. Their ships were destroyed before they could even send a distress signal. Back on Nexus Prime Station, the Galactic Council was finally beginning to understand the true scope of what was happening. This was not a sudden human military buildup. This was the activation of a war machine that had been building for decades while the galaxy watched humans build peaceful colonies and establish trade relationships. Ambassador Krixtal studied the intelligence reports with growing horror. They have detailed files on every member of this council. They know our military capabilities, our political structures, our economic weaknesses. They have contingency plans for scenarios we never imagined. Council. Speaker Veltar looked at the evidence spread across his desk, photographs of classified alien military installations taken by human agents, intercepted communications that showed human operatives had been present at high-level alien government meetings, strategic assessments that revealed humans understood alien warfare better than the aliens understood it themselves. How long have they been planning this? Veltar asked. The answer came from an unexpected source. Colonel Frank Wright, the human spy who had revealed himself days earlier, entered the chamber with several alien prisoners. They were Zephyrian military officers who had been captured during recent battles. We started planning the day we joined your galactic community, Frank said calmly. Every diplomatic mission was also an intelligence-gathering operation. Every trade agreement included clauses that gave our agents access to your worlds. Every cultural exchange program was cover for military reconnaissance. He gestured toward the prisoners. These officers can tell you about the human agent who lived on their base for 2 years as a maintenance technician, or the one who worked in their intelligence division as a translator, or the one who served as a cook in their officers' mess and listened to classified briefings every day. One of the Zephyrian prisoners, a high-ranking general named Morthak, spoke with a voice full of defeat. We never suspected. The humans seemed so genuine in their desire for peace. Their agents became our friends, our colleagues, our trusted allies. They attended our military academies, served on our ships, even married into our families. Frank nodded. That's what made them so effective. They actually did want peace, but they also prepared for war, just in case peace failed. When you started killing our civilians, they activated networks that had been dormant for years. The council members stared at the evidence of human deception and preparation. They were beginning to realize that they had never really known their human neighbors at all. The peaceful, naive species they thought they understood had actually been something much more dangerous. What happens now? Veltar asked quietly. Frank smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Now you get to watch what happens when the most patient species in the galaxy decides that patience has failed. The Zephyrian homeworld burned. Admiral Danny Cooper stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching the last pockets of resistance collapse under human bombardment. 6 months had passed since humanity abandoned diplomacy. The Zephyrian empire, which had terrorized human colonies for years, no longer existed as a political entity. Danny felt no satisfaction watching the destruction below. This was not celebration. This was cleanup. The Zephyrians had forced this outcome when they chose to murder human civilians. Now they were learning what happened when you made that choice. His communications officer approached with a report. Sir, the last Zephyrian government officials have surrendered. The planet is under complete human control. Danny nodded without emotion. Begin relocation procedures. All surviving Zephyrians are to be moved to the designated containment zones. Full processing and documentation. No exceptions. The human military machine worked with the same cold efficiency it had shown throughout the campaign. There were no victory parades or celebration ceremonies. There was only systematic processing of a defeated enemy population and the establishment of human administrative control. This was how humans had always approached problems. They would try to solve them peacefully first. But if violence became necessary, they would apply it completely and without hesitation until the problem no longer existed. On what used to be the Zephyrian capital world, former war leader Vexthor sat in a human detention facility, staring at walls made of materials he did not recognize. 3 months earlier, he had been commanding fleets and conquering worlds. Now he was prisoner number 47291 in a processing center run by humans who treated him with the same indifference they showed to all defeated enemies. The humans did not torture their prisoners or execute them for revenge. They simply removed them from society and stored them efficiently until they decided what to do with them permanently. It was somehow more terrifying than cruelty would have been. Vexthor remembered his last battle, when Admiral Tucker's forces had cornered his fleet, near the Meridian Junction. The humans had not demanded surrender or offered terms for negotiation. They had simply destroyed every ship that resisted and captured every ship that did not. No drama, no speeches, no mercy, just results. A human guard walked past his cell, without acknowledging his existence. To these creatures, he was no longer a war leader or a threat. He was just another item to be cataloged and stored while they decided his fate. The Galactic Council had tried to negotiate for the remaining Zephyrian survivors, but the humans were no longer interested in council involvement. Ambassador Jake Harrison had been very clear about humanity's new position when the council delegates attempted to arrange peace talks. There will be no negotiations, Jake had said from his new office in the human military government building on former Zephyrian territory. The council had years to prevent this outcome. You chose to do nothing while our people died. Now you get to watch while we solve the problem ourselves. The alien delegates had tried to appeal to human mercy and compassion, concepts they had seen humans value during the diplomatic years. But those humans were gone, replaced by military administrators who saw the Zephyrians as a solved problem, rather than potential negotiating partners. Council Speaker Veltar had made one final attempt to restore diplomatic relations. Surely, there must be some way to return to peaceful cooperation. Violence cannot be the permanent solution. Jake had looked at him with the expression of someone explaining simple facts to a child. Speaker Veltar, you are correct that violence is not a permanent solution. The permanent solution is the complete removal of the problem that caused the violence. We have achieved that solution. Now 6 months later, the galaxy was learning to live with the new reality. Humanity controlled what used to be Zephyrian space. Human military forces patrolled trade routes that had once been neutral territory. Human administrators decided which alien species could travel through which star systems. The Council had tried to maintain some semblance of galactic governance, but they quickly discovered that their authority only extended to areas where humans allowed it to extend. And humans were not in a mood to allow very much. Ambassador Rachel Adams stood before the reformed Galactic Council in their new meeting hall. The old chamber on Nexus Prime had been converted to a human military base after the station's occupation. This new facility orbited Earth, built by human engineers according to human specifications. The alien delegates sat in chairs designed for human comfort, rather than their own biological needs. The translation systems were programmed with human languages as the primary protocols. The ceremonial decorations were human cultural symbols rather than the traditional neutral imagery they were accustomed to. Rachel looked out at the assembled representatives of species that had once considered humans to be junior partners in galactic civilization. Now they sat quietly and waited for her to speak, like children hoping to avoid punishment from an angry parent. The Galactic Council will continue to exist, Rachel announced, but its role has changed. You will no longer debate human actions or vote on human policies. You will receive information about human decisions and comply with human requirements. Ambassador Krixtal of the Hegemony, one of the few alien delegates who still showed any spirit, stood up to object. This is not galactic governance, this is human dominance. Rachel looked at him calmly. Yes, it is. You had the opportunity to prevent this outcome. For 3 years we begged you to stop the Zephyrian attacks on our people. You chose to form committees and write resolutions instead. This is the result of that choice. She gestured toward the viewing screen that showed the bustling activity of human space stations and military bases throughout what had once been neutral territory. We tried to work within your system. We followed your rules. We respected your procedures. We believed in your promise that civilized beings could solve problems through discussion and compromise. The chamber was silent as Rachel continued. We were wrong. Your system does not work. Your rules protect aggressors and punish victims. Your procedures value process over justice. We will not make the mistake of trusting in diplomatic solutions again. Veltar, his voice barely above a whisper, asked the question that haunted every alien delegate in the room. What do you want? From us? Rachel's expression never changed. We want you to understand that the galaxy has new management. Humanity will decide which species are allowed to expand their territories. Humanity will determine which conflicts require intervention. Humanity will establish the rules that govern interstellar commerce and military activity. She paused to let this sink in before continuing. You will comply with human decisions not because we are cruel, but because we are effective. We solved the Zephyrian problem in 6 months after you failed to solve it in 3 years. We will solve other problems with the same efficiency if they arise. The alien delegates sat in stunned silence as the full implications of their new reality became clear. They were no longer equal partners in galactic civilization. They were subjects of a human empire that had been built while they watched, and did nothing to prevent it. Rachel concluded her address with words that would echo throughout. Alien space for generations to come. The age of human diplomacy is over. The age of human dominance has begun. We suggest you learn to live with this new reality, because it is the only reality you will have. Outside the station windows, human warships patrolled the space around, Earth like mechanical sentinels, their weapon systems powered and ready. The galaxy's former leaders could see their own reflection in the dark hulls of those ships, and in that reflection, they saw what they had created through their own inaction and indifference. The humans had tried to be diplomats, now they were conquerors, and the galaxy would never be the same.